различни, така малко различни района, климатични. Yeah.
And so it's been a difficult year this year. Very wet early in the season, with a long dry spell with high heat.
Да, доста влажна беше годината с много големи горещини.
And so this is just some pictures of what it looks like going into springtime with our cover crop mixes.
Това е микса покривна култура наша, това е през пролетта тази година.
If you've never planted into that before, it'll definitely give you some anxiety.
Ако никога не сме засявали директно отгоре върху такава покривна култура, със сигурност ще бъде така стряскащо и напрегнато.
But the main reason that we really focus on improving our soil health is in this slide.
Тук на този слайд виждаме, искам да покажа това, което се фокусира той и по принцип на мотивирате. Yeah.
So the picture on the left is what our depleted soils look like in the first year we started farming. And if you look on the right-hand side of the screen, just in 4 years of reduced tillage and covers, we already see carbon and earthworms and biological indicators back into our soil visually.
Да, това отляво е през първата снимка, когато са започнали да земеделци през първата година, колко е бедна на реална биология. Тук на дясната снимка е 4 години по-късно, как ето този горен слой вече започна да има повече въглерод, виждат си черви и структура.
And the things that we look at on our farm, key indicators in the Haney test are soil biology, soil available carbon to the biology, the food source, and our organic matter increases.
Основните неща, върху които се фокусираме, са той прави почвен тест при Ръсел Хедрик, който е един от най-известните почвени човек, който има изследователски институт за почвени проби. Това е течният въглерод, който е реално усвоимия за растенията. Той прави такъв тест, за да разбере какво е нивото му.
And by following the soil health principles you can see on this slide, the increases up on the top of 720% increase in soil biology over 9 years.
9 years?
Yeah, 9 years, 720% increase.
Да, това са процентите, разликата за 9 години. Той в Рикени прави, измерва анализ за количеството микробиология, микроорганизми в почвата и за 9 години са се увеличили с 720%.
And anyone who farms in this conference, remember to set your baselines.
Казва всички да, когато започват Ноу Тил, да си измерят и да си направят тестове, за да видят в какво състояние в момента почват, откъде тръгват.
And setting your baselines include earthworm counts and water infiltration tests and understanding where your soil's at now so you have a better read for the future.
Това включва измерване, т.е. преброяване на червите, долу-горе какво количество имаме, използване на тест за инфилтрация на почвата. Ето тук той има такъв пръстен, който го забива, сипва вода и следи с за колко секунди ще се попие водата.
So as we've increased our soil health and our biology in the soil, our crops have become more resilient to droughts and adverse climate change.
Увеличавайки плодородието от биологията в почвата, нашите култури стават по-устойчиви на засушаване и на различни стресове, климатични стресове.
And we still use a very small amount of fertilizer and chemicals where needed, but drastically less.
Ние драстично сме намалили препаратите и торовете, все още използваме понякога в някакви количества.
Based on the Haney test and utilizing our cover crops, this corn crop was grown with only using one chemical at planting, and we used about 80% less nitrogen than conventional methods would recommend.
So probably you sprayed with herbicide and then nothing like fungicides and insecticides, and 20% of the total nitrogen compared to the others. Just a second. Значи казва, че на това поле използва 20% от стандартната тонова норма и използва единствено един препарат преди в началото на културата. Did you use herbicide? And you said
we're down to just one.
Yeah, you said one chemical, chemical.
One herbicide. That's it.
Да, използва значи просто един хербицид в началото, най-вероятно преди сидата. Yeah.
To kind of explain that, our roller crimper does not get 100% termination of our cover crop. And so after we roll it and plant it, we have to, because of crop insurance, make sure that we just use a very low rate and make sure all the cover crop's dead.
Yeah. Значи той използва ролър крипър, тези валяците, които терминират покривните култури, но използва и хербицид, защото и заради техните субсидии, такива застраховки, се налага, не са стигнали още до етап там и хербицидите да ги спрат, но ги е намалил, просто използва много ниска норма.
So the biggest thing that we have seen visually is this corn was planted on the same day with the same management practices, but the one on your right had cover crops and livestock integration, and the one on the left was just simply a conventional system.
Да, отдясно е царевица от Ноу Тил поле с покривни култури, отляво е конвенционално поле, засяти се го в един и същи ден.
And it really blew my mind just seeing the difference of having a healthier biological soil and how it affected grain quality.
Наистина го е изненадало много въобще качеството на зърното, отдясно в Ноу Тил, отляво конвенционално, въобще самото здраве на самата царевица.
Do you grow many soybeans over there at all?
Not really, just a little bit.
Okay.
Usually we have wheat and corn and sometimes canola and sunflower mainly.
And one of the things that we have focused on the last 6 or 7 years is using sugars for insect management to stop using insecticides.
Едно от нещата, които през последните години най-много работят, върху които работят, е да използват, да използват захари за справяне с вредителите вместо инсектициди.
And sugars will work on insect management, but they have to be used preventatively and not as a curative. So you have to use the sugar before the arrival of the insects, the pests.
Да, те могат да заменят инсектицидите, но трябва да бъдат използвани превентивно. Не може да ги използваме, няма да имаме ефект, ако ги използваме просто в последствие, за да убием вредителите.
And the biggest thing when using sugars as a insect management program is we want to get the Brix level above 14.
Използваме захарите, искаме да дигнем брикса, нивото на брикс на културите, нивото на захари в културите над 15. Благодарение на захарите.
And so one of the biggest things that we have struggled with this year is nutrient costs. And these 3 years, the one on the right had full nitrogen, the one in the middle had half nitrogen, and the one on the left had no nitrogen.
Едно от най-големите трудности тази година е било, че цените на торовете са си били вдигнати и най-дясната царевица е била с пълна норма на торене, а средната с половина, а най-лявата с без никакъв тор.
The biggest takeaway for us was with cover crops and understanding the nitrogen we had in the soil from the Haney test, we can greatly reduce our nitrogen inputs and maintain a good yield.
Най-важното нещо са покривните култури и също и тестовете, които е правил при Рикени, за да види какво е налично в почвата и по този начин е намалил много разходите, но пак има нормални дълги.
And the biggest thing that we've come to learn over the last 10 years of farming is that data is only as good as you can understand it.
Нещо, което е разбрал през последните години е, че информацията е много важна, но тогава, когато може да я схванем.
And if nobody here has seen a Haney test, if you can see the bottom left where it says nitrogen credit in pounds per acre, our Haney test showed that we picked up an additional 70 units of nitrogen we would not have seen on a traditional test.
Теста, който Рикени прави, е показал, че additional 70 units?
Yeah. 70 pounds of nitrogen.
Yeah, 70 pounds per acre, which is... Значи, теста, който Рикени прави, показва и по-подробен и стандартните тестове не го показват това нещо, но в случая неговия тест му показва, че има наличен усвоим азот около 70 pounds per acre, което е 35 на 4, около 9 кг, 8-9 кг на декар усвоим наличен азот, който стандартните тестове не могат да показват този азот.
And for us, that's huge in savings. That saved us around $85 to $90 per acre on our corn crop, just in that one measurement.
И само заради това, че той направи такъв тест и е видял този азот, това му е спестило реално около $20-25 на декар.
And one thing that we recommend farmers look at doing are pulling deeper soil samples, where traditionally they say we should pull a soil sample 6 inches deep, and on our farm we're going 12 to 18 inches deep.
Също каза, че е важно да, когато правим почва вземане, започваме проби, да взимаме от по-дълбоки места. Обикновено взимаме стандартно на около 15 см, но той започна да взима и на по-големи дълбочини, 20, 30, 40 см. Че дори по-добре.
Because this sample shows where we went from 6 to 12 inches deep and we picked up an additional 61 pounds of nitrogen.
So can you explain? Can you explain this a little bit, sir?
This one's a 6 to 12 sample and it showed more nitrogen at that depth.
Да, казва, че заради това, че е взел на по-голяма дълбочина почвена проба, му е показал, че има повече азот и от дълбочина и това също му е намалило долната на армаряна. Yeah.
I didn't understand.
Yeah, I did translate this, what you said, the last one. Yeah, I see you now. You've canceled your presentation, or it was the last slide?
Yeah, that was the last slide. It clicked off.
You have some advices about the cover crops, maybe, and what did you do? What kind of...
Yes, the biggest thing that I will say about the cover crops are make sure that you balance your carbon to nitrogen ratios. That is a critical piece that farmers and seed salesmen miss. Are if we get the carbon to nitrogen ratio too high, then we lock up a lot of nutrients and they don't get cycled for a very long time. And so we recommend mixing legumes in with your small grain and keeping that carbon to nitrogen ratio at 40 to 1.
Mixing legume, you mean on the standard wheat to include legume?
Yes, the legume.
In the cash crop, to include legume in the cash crop as well?
Yes, so we've been mixing clovers, with oats and wheat and even our rye we're taking seed in very small rates, like just 2 to 3 pounds per acre.
Да, значи казва, че едно от най-важните неща е когато се вземе покривни култури и правим миксове, те да са в добро съотношение въглерод и азот. Често се случва да имаме твърде много въглерод в покривните култури, примерно ако използваме много ръж, основни и други такива житни, хубаво е в някои случаи той започва да добавя примерно бобови в пшеницата, като засява пшеницата, добави малка норма бобова култура, заедно да си расте с нея, която зимата измръзва, но пък балансира точно този недостиг на азот. Yeah. Yeah.
Yep. The biggest thing about the cover crops are to understand the way that they interact with our cash crop as well in that setting, that we can build nitrogen and maintain that nitrogen until later in the season when that small grain is going to go into seed production, and that really does have best weight and grain quality.
Да каза, че вкарвайки бобови култури повече в миксовете, това ще ни, ако отглеждаме много царевица и пшеница и такива, не много бобови култури, да се опитаме може би малко повече да вкарваме бобови, това ще ни подобри зърното също.
And the one thing that I don't know is, do you have the ability, does your lab have the ability to run a nutrient analysis on your residue, your cover crop residue? Does that make sense?
Да, казва, че нали, растителните остатъци в някои случаи могат да останат твърде дълго по полетата или пък зависимо от нашия сидбооборот или какви покривни култури оставаме, но нали, боловите реално разграждат нали, бързо растителните остатъци. Ако имаме този проблем, имаме твърде много растителни остатъци, нали, да увеличим боловите и обратното, ако нямаме достатъчно защита на почвата, да повече въглеродни да засяваме. Yeah.
So do you have the ability to see a nutrient analysis breakdown of that cover crop? Like, can you harvest that residue in the field and send it to a lab and they tell you the nutrients that are in that cover crop?
I'm not exactly sure. Maybe there should be some kind of a test, but I don't know how specific and detailed it is. So not so much maybe. I wanted to ask you about the planting. I mean, to you, how important is the planting? And I mean, when people start with Ноу Тил, it's very common that people hear about Ноу Тил and they want to try, and quite often there is some kind of a mistake on the planting side or the compaction issue, and then they have kind of a worse result, a little bit less, or maybe sometimes much less yield, and then they say that Ноу Тил doesn't work. So what are your advices, and this kind of regard, how important is the planting, and what we can do to make sure that we have at least our first planting, make it more or less right, so at least we don't have much worse result.
So we have the same problem here in the U.S. and remember to understand it took tens, if not hundreds of years for us to degrade the soil. And we're not going to fix it in 1 year.
Значи, аз го питах за присидбата, какви са проблемите по време на сидба в началото, когато хората започват с Ноу Тил, така че да се случи добре и да няма проблем в понижаване на добива. И така, че нали, ние реално в продължение на доста години, стотици буквално сме нали, прилагали обработки, реално сме изтощавали почвата и тя няма за една година да се възстанови. Не можем.
The best way to address the first year of transition is to keep your cover crops simple, and we recommend one grass, one legume, and one brassica.
Когато започваме нали, покритни култури като сеем, да са малко по-простени, може би е по-добре да имаме примерно една бобова, една зелева, кръстоцветна и може би 2-3 житни.
And make sure that your planters are in the best shape they've ever been in, because tilled ground allows us to run our planters in worse shape than what Ноу Тил does. And so a sharp culture, good double disc openers, and sometimes we do have to add weight to the planter to make sure we get adequate planting depth.
Да, казва, че е много важна сеитбата и трябва да подготвим, когато започваме с Ноу Тил, да подготвим сялката да е в най-добрата си форма, наистина да са остри дисковете, да сме сигурни, че засяваме семената на подходящата дълбочина. Yeah.
And don't try to get your cover crops too big in the first year. It may be best to keep the cover crop at a small to maybe a foot to 2 feet tall. Don't try to get this massive amount of biomass and then try to deal with that in year one.
Да, още в началото, през първата 1-2 години, да не ни е фокуса да се опитаме покривните културите да останат да растат максимално и да има твърде много биомаса, защото знаем, че е полезно, но реално може да имаме по-голямо затруднение, ако имаме твърде много биомаса, да имаме затруднение с самата сеитба. И затова може би е по-добре да ги малко по-рано да ги терминираме. And what about the compaction? I mean, when you started, what was your soil, let's say, and how quickly you kind of solved this problem with the compaction? And then, did you have a lot of problems and issues with the kind of lowering yield just because your soil was compacted? And did you also check for plow pan and repeat to solve it also?
So we, here in North Carolina, we have we call it a generational plow pan, about 18 inches deep, about half a meter deep is what we call our generational plow pan.
Значи казва, питах го за плужната пета, дали има плужна пета, дали е правил, дали е тествал, дали има плужна пета. В началото, като почва с Ноу Тил и казва, че при него около 40-50 см е общо взето много стандартно да има масово, да има плужна пета. Yeah.
And the best way that we address that compaction is a function of time, and it takes time to remediate that compaction.
Казва, че опропадняването на почвата е нещо, което се изисква време, за да се реши този проблем.
And the way that we do that is, imagine that the best analogy I have is, imagine if you were going to drill concrete. You start with a smaller bit and then finally drill with a larger bit, and that's how we utilize cover crops, is to get those cover crop roots into the soil profile, and as that root decays, it leaves a hole that opens up for the larger cash crop root to go through.
That's really important and clever. Значи казва, че покривните култури ги използва като когато пробиваме бетон, например. Първо пробиваме с по-малък тънък, как се казва? Да, примерно с средова и след това постепенно увеличаваме средова и реално покривните култури играят ролята на, те разробват почвата и реално те прокарват пътя и след това вече корените на основните култури използват същите канали.
And it's a cumulative effect, or it increases exponentially from year 1 to year 2 by leaving that soil structure in place with those channels already in the soil profile.
Да, и ефекта реално се натрупва и между първата и втората година има ефект, после между втората и третата има още по-голям градивен ефект и оставяйки корените на покривните култури да си останат, те наистина имат добър ефект.
And the biggest hurdle for converting to no-till and converting your system is, unless you push it very, very hard in the first year or two, it takes 2 to 3 years for the ground to achieve a higher yield than with conventional. But yes, we do have those problems in year 1 and 2 that we may see less, and that is very hard to stomach.
Да, каза, че е възможно първите 1-2-3 години да имаме по-нисък добив, това е трудно да го приемем, разбира се, възможно и да нямаме, но просто си трябва някакво време почвата да се възстанови и да започне да се получава дори по-високи добиви от стандартния. So you are saying also that is it possible, is it common, is it regular, is it with you also, your case, to have a higher yield than before? Now, when you have a higher organic matter and better structure and better water holding capacity and so on. So generally, let's say in the long term, not talking about the first years, in the long term, should the yields and are the yields better than the conventional farming? Because many people think that in Ноу Тил you have lower yield, and also many people think that in biological farming you always have lower yield than conventional.
Just so I can use these terms correctly, do you measure your corn yield in metric tons?
Yeah. No, I mean we measure it in kilograms by weight, not by cubic meters.
Okay.
Just the weight. But kilograms, yeah, we use kilograms, not pounds. But
let's
anyway,
say 55 pounds, is that correct?
I can translate it. I mean, I can convert more or less.
So, our county average, where I live, the county average is 110 bushels of corn per acre.
Just a second. Значи питах го за добивите, по принцип, дали при Ноу Тил с течение на времето се увеличават спрямо конвенционалното, защото се случва или пък се остават същите като конвенционалните, или пък са по-ниски. И той сега ни дава пример с неговото стопанство, че по принцип неговите средните добиви за неговия район и местност са 110 бушела на екър, което долу-горе по 6, около 700 кг, да кажем, 800 на декар средни добиви. Конвенционално. Yeah?
So, we are in the 10th year of our farming operation, and I have healthy no-till soils that will be 4 times that this year.
4 times what?
4 times the yield than our county average.
You're going to have 4 times higher yield than the county. Really?
I'm sharing this on your Zoom call here that I haven't told another soul. But we have corn that we may set a new world no-till dryland record of 420 bushels per acre.
Okay, let me think and realize and translate it. Значи казва, че тази година има царевица, която е много възможно да... Той 10 години прилага Ноу Тил и вече почвите му са много възстановени. Той наистина е много бързо напреден, наистина от най-добрите в света. И има възможност тази година неговата царевица да бие световния рекорд. So you think that your corn, the world record is 400 bushel, and you think that you haven't harvested yet?
Yeah, the current world record for dryland no-till is 406 bushels per acre, and I think we're going to beat it by about 10 to 15 bushels.
Окей, значи казва, че световният рекорд е 406 бушела на екър и смята, че неговата царевица тази година ще бъде с около 10 или 15 бушела по-висока. Но още няма лъжа, но по сега ще измерим.
But to give an average of what we see across the United States, farmers in their 4th, 5th, 6th year are traditionally 20 to 30% higher in a no-till system than their conventional neighbors. But it takes 4 to 5 years for you to see this increase to where it's more resilient.
And more stable, yeah. Значи каза, че говорейки средно за щатите, генерализирайки, след 5-6 година повечето фермери имат около 20-30% по-висок добив, но си трябва от средния за конвенционално производство, но си трябва няколко години, 5-6 години, докато се стигне до някакъв такъв момент, в който добивите така видимо се заедно да са по-високи, отколкото са били до сега. So, yeah, that is crazy. That is crazy. I mean,
it is crazy, and the hard part is making the transition in the first 2 years, and learning a new system and how that new system functions. But once you get past that, the benefit to better yield and less reliance on chemicals, herbicides, or tillage, it really does make farming more profitable. And that's the key is grow better food and be more profitable.
Да, казва, че наистина първите 1-2-3 години могат да бъдат трудни. Това е съвсем, да кажем, доста различен метод на земеделие. Има много неща, които са различни, с които въобще не сме свикнали. Но като се попреминат тия първите години на въобще прохождане и на първи стъпки, последствие вече добивите наистина започват да са дори по-добри, но казва, че въобще намаляването и на хербицидите, и на препарати и торове просто прави земеделието като цяло доста по-печелившо и храната също като качество също е по-добре. There is a question about the rainfall this year. За тази година... He's asking about the rainfall. In your area, I mean, do you have a lot of rains during the spring, or is it during the winter? In the summer, do you have rains and those kind of things?
So typically, we get 40 inches of rain over a year, but about 70% of that is in the wintertime, and we are typically hot and more dry during the summertime.
40 millimeters of rain? 40 inches, okay. Значи около 1000 литра на квадрат, но 80% от тях са през зимния период, а лятото има доста горещи и продължително сухи лета. Yep. There is some kind of a doubt when the rainfall is high. A lot of people are kind of thinking that it's when you have a lot of rain, you can do Ноу Тил. When you have no rain or less rain, when it's dry area, it's kind of very hard or sometimes impossible. What's your advice when it's a dry area with much less rainfall, let's say 10-15 millimeters, 10-15 inches of rainfall? What would be your advice in general about drier areas?
So cover crops become so much more important in dry climates. And an example, 15 inches of rain, 15 inches of rain would be the equivalent to Kansas. And having tilled bare ground evaporates more water than what they see in a year of rainfall. So they actually remove more moisture from the subsoil and hurt themselves with tillage. And it does take a longer time with less rainfall to build a healthier soil. That's just the facts.
Казва, че когато е по-сухо, е по-трудно да се подобри почвата, да се възстанови. Обработката наистина е много, как да кажа, изпарява много влага и от дълбочина и казва, че покривните култури в този случай, в който е сух района, тогава са дори по-важни. So you said the cover crops are even more important. So but there is this thing that a lot of people are thinking, it's in our kind of general logic, that when you have no rain, you don't have enough for the cover crops. Well, what is actually the truth? I mean, what's the reality?
The thing about cover crops with limited moisture is to don't use too much. So what I would plant in North Carolina, they would plant the same species, but at a half rate, half the number of pounds per acre in Kansas. And keeping the ground covered and cool stops pan evaporation. And pan evaporation is what we lose most of our moisture to in low rainfall environments where we do tillage. The sun bakes the water out of the ground. And by stopping the pan evaporation, we actually have more moisture available to our crops.
Казва, че нали, ако района е сух с малко валежи, тогава нормата на покривните култури ще бъде по-малка и сравнява с него и в Канзас, където вали наполовина. Казва, че в Канзас нали, тогава в случая по-добре да засяват покривните култури с 2 пъти по-ниска норма. Но пък покривните култури, нали, дори да са с ниска норма, те пак охлаждат, пак засенчват почвата и спират изпаряването на влагата и реално с покривни култури с ниска норма реално имат повече влага, отколкото ако е гола почвата.
And the best way to simulate what pan evaporation is to a farmer is put water in a bucket and set it out in your field in the sunlight, and then set another bucket right beside of it with the same amount of water and put a lid over the top of it, and see how much water is in the bucket in a week. And it is mind-blowing to see how much moisture we can conserve and have additional moisture for growing cover crops and cash crops just by simply keeping the ground covered and cool.
That is nice test. Really nice. Значи казва, може да си направим сравнение, да вземем една кофа с вода и една кофа с вода с капак отгоре, нали, примерно да пробием дълки, но колкото да може да се изпарява, нали, но все пак да е засенчена водата в другата кофа и просто да видим, да оставим тази кофа, нали, за няколко дни или в горещите летни дни и да видим колко повече влага се е запазила в кофата, която е засенчена. И по същия начин, нали, същото е на полетата, когато са засенчени полетата, колко повече вода запазваме. There was a question about the nitrogen. There was a question about the nitrogen that you use for the corn. Usually how much you use, and this year also with this good result, how much nitrogen did you use?
So the high yielding corn that we talked about we applied 120 pounds of nitrogen.
When did you
that is
apply?
about 25% of what a traditional test would show. But we utilized the Haney test and a cover crop nutrient test to know what's out there, and then we subtract that off of what we need, and we apply the bare minimum.
Значи казва, че са сложили около 12 кг, ако правилно го 120 паунда на екър, което е 60 кг, което е делено на 4, около 12. И просто са използвали този рикиен тест, който им е показал ускоримия наличен благодарение и на биологията азот, който стандартните тестове не го показват, и заради това на база на този тест са сложили минималното количество, което е било необходимо. Сега ще го питам. Can you tell us when did you apply this nitrogen, and on one time with the planting, or just when do you apply this nitrogen, or you liquid nitrogen did you use, or?
So our nitrogen management on our farm is we apply 60 pounds or roughly 30 kilograms. It's been a long time since I've done metric conversions, I apologize. That should be about 30 kilograms liquid with the planter.
On the furrow?
And the, 2 by 2, right beside the road.
So one line planter, one line coulter with the liquid fertilizer, and then again.
We were running coulter on the planter with liquid fertilizer.
At what depth?
And then when the corn's about V7 to V8, or roughly 3 to 4 feet tall, a little over a meter tall, we broadcast over the top. So we split apply our nitrogen because the corn doesn't need a lot in the beginning of the season.
Да, значи по време на сеитбата те имат единия ред семената, по средата е колтер с течен азот, който е бил половината норма, и след това когато царевицата е била около 1 метър висока, около 6-7 лист, тогава е сложил останалата част с торачката. At what depth did you put the liquid nitrogen with the planter, or?
2 to 3 inches deep.
Казва, че на 2-3 см дълбочина е слагал азота, 2-3 инча, значи около 7-8. Тоест, и казва, че реално го разделя азота на две, защото в началото на растежа си реално царевицата няма чак толкова голяма нужда, толкова много голямо количество азот, и затова го разделя на два пъти.
Питам ли за фунгицидни инсектициди до превенстивни неща? Други въпроси?
Други въпроси? Момчета, момичета. So what about do you plant cover crops after the corn? When you harvest the corn, do you plant cover crops for the winter?
It depends on our rotation. Sometimes we plant cover crops behind corn, and sometimes we plant winter wheat behind corn. It just depends on our rotation.
Значи в някои случаи засява след царевицата, като е оженен, засява или покривни култури, или пшеница. Do you also?
Пшеницата не за рекултиране, а за предвиждане култури.
Не.
winter wheat you plant for harvest, yeah?
Yes.
Да, за сежене, да. Do you plant also kind of, we call it here, second cash crop, like when you harvest the winter wheat? Do you plant directly, let's say, sunflower or soybean or some other crop? We call it second cash crop here. I don't know.
Yes, we call it double cropping here, and if we have a very degraded soil, if we have a very poor soil, then behind our winter wheat, we will plant a summer cover crop, and we can either utilize the summer cover crop for forage and we can graze it with cattle, or we can simply leave it there to build organic matter. If we have a good functioning soil, then yes, we'll double crop, and behind wheat we can plant sunflowers or soybeans. We've done both.
Значи, пита го за втора култура, дали се е втора култура и каза, че ако почвата е много зле, много сбита и с ниско съдържание на органична материя и въобще условията са лоши, обикновено няма да се е втора култура, ще засее микс от покривни култури, но ако почвата е, нали, до някаква степен възстановена, тогава да, се или соя или слънчоглед.
Фосфор, слага ли фосфор и кога го слага фосфор?
По принцип при всяка култура и при...
Do you use phosphorus in as in organic fertilizer, and when, if you use phosphorus, when do you apply it?
When we first started farming, we used more phosphorus fertilizer, and as we see the soil biology increase with the Haney test, we've cut our phosphorus fertilizer by about 90%. If we have to use phosphorus fertilizer, we put that in the planter at planting time and put it in that 2x2 coulter row because it's more efficient in a band than it is broadcast over the blade.
Значи казва, че фосфор все още слагат, но са го намалили на 90% и слага ако слага фосфор, той слага пак по същия начин в междуредието. So you said it's more efficient than broadcasting because of what? It's because you do it while planting.
When you put phosphorus in a band in a concentrated zone, it's more efficient for the root right beside the plant to go to that concentrated zone than it is for the roots to have to go through the whole acre. And phosphorus is very immobile in soil profile, and so phosphorus only moves 1/4 inch down per year. So by putting the phosphorus deeper in the soil with the band, it also keeps it in a zone that has moisture, so the roots can then go to that part that still has moisture in that banded concentrated zone.
Значи казва, че аз обърках, той го слага заедно с ялката, но нали, леко в страни, както нали, другия, не в междуредието, например на половина 1 см, самата там как е настроена с ялката. И тогава е той самия фосфор по принцип много бавно се придвижва нали, надолу и по 1 см на година средно и там съответно нали, повече влагат нали, по време на растежа и на покълването на семето и нали, дори реално с по-малко от норма пак постига висок резултат.
Използва ли бактерии за отключване на фосфор или Ноу Тила сами се възпроизвеждат?
Yeah, one farmer, he's asking about, do you use phosphorus solubilizer bacteria? I don't know if it's the correct name, solubilizing, but there are bacteria who can make phosphorus plant available. So some people here are using not only nitrogen fixing bacteria, but also bacteria using like as an inoculant to the soil, so they can make the phosphorus available and block it basically. So do you use it? Do you recommend it? And or do you kind of expect that your soil is your biology in the soil is gonna do that job, or do you inoculate? Also, you can say about other things. Do you inoculate with some microorganism, mycorrhizal fungi, and others also?
So, phosphorus availability is directly tied to mycorrhizal fungi. And one example, oats are the best cover crop for increasing mycorrhizal fungi in the soil profile. So even if we inoculate, you have to have a plant there that helps them grow. Does that make sense?
You have to have what?
A plant. You have to have a plant like
living root.
to help them pollinize.
Yeah, living root. Значи казва, че овеса е с културата, която най-много като покрима култура, която и като основна левосекооборота, която увеличава фосфора в почвата и не, която помага на микоризните гъби, а микоризните гъби реално са тези, които най-много помагат за реално да има фосфор усвоим в почвата за растенията. И And do you
go ahead.
Do you use other ways, types of things to help the phosphorus availability, or is mycorrhizal fungi? I mean, it's not popular, it's not usable. You don't use phosphorus, bacteria, and these kind of things.
We are trying a new thing on the farm for the last 2 years. And it's a algae, and so we're not focused on adding biology. We're focused on building the biology we already have in our soils. And using compost is one big carbon source that has helped us increase that mycorrhizal fungi. And the other thing is this algae. It's very new. I do not have a lot of data on it, but the algae is a very good food source for fungi. And we can apply the algae and feed the fungi that we already have in the soil profile. And that's what we're focused on, is compost and food sources for the biology we already have.
Значи казва, че през 2 години са започнали да използват нещо. По принцип се фокусират върху това не да добавят отвънка микроорганизми, а по-скоро да засилват тези, които са си вътре в почвата. По принцип си правят и компост, нали? Но и сега от 2 години са започнали да използват някакви водорасли, които нали, казват, че е нещо ново за него, интересно, което сега нали, продължава да го проучва. И so, how do you use the algae? You inoculate the seeds? Sort of?
We put it in the liquid with the seeds.
In the furrow?
Yep.
Значи тези водорасли ги слагат като течен разтвор при семето. And but did you say about the compost? Do you make compost? Do you use compost? I mean, let's talk about the people who are not. I mean, we are not at your level, let's say. So we are in the beginning, kind of. And although we have some very good farmers, but generally we are still in the beginning in Bulgaria. So let's talk about in the beginning. Is it better to make compost and use compost? Is it better to, especially for the ones that are still on the regular fertilizer program, in the fungicide program, insecticide program? I mean, how to do the transition?
So the way that we transition is, in the first year or 2 years, we bought our compost. And that did okay, but the best way that we do compost is we buy local compost and manure, and we started taking about 2 inches, like we would go in the forest with a loader, and we would dig down about 2 inches and scoop the soil about 2 inches deep in the forest, and then add that to the compost, and we would just mix it in with our loader. And that's taking your natural biology and you're inoculating your compost with your natural biology while it sits there for about 6 months to a year, and you're literally just building millions and millions of natural biological activity that's meant for your area and your area. So like what I do in North Carolina, my compost would not do as good in your area, but by taking what you naturally have in the forest, and I'm talking about a half of a cubic yard, so not a lot of volume from the forest, can inoculate 100 tons of compost in 6 months. And so using what you naturally have and building that in your compost, when you put that back on your field, you're biologically going to be 4 to 5 years ahead, versus trying to add something that's not natural in your system.
Казва, че това, което също той прави е да, когато се прави компост, да отива и да маха горните, нали, листата и взима, нали, почва от тази най-рокавата, най-хубавата, след това добавя в компоста, миксира го хубаво, след това го остава около 3 до 6 месеца. И тогава се намножават буквално милиони, милиарди микроорганизми и казва, че, нали, правейки го това, взимайки, нали, такава почва от нашата близка гора, нали, ще добавят точно такива микроорганизми, които на нас не трябват, и ако вземем компост от примерно Северна Каролина, той може да не е толкова добър, колкото нашия местен компост с нашите местни микроорганизми. И той в началото, когато е правил прехода към Ноу Тил, той е, нали, купувал борска тор, купува си също компост, сега се прави него. Is there, what was kind of, let's say, your biggest kind of a failure? I mean, some things that it's very easy, it's very common to mess up with. It's because sometimes here people are very inspired and they go and they do something on 60% of their land. I mean, it's very, we don't have time to make trials and make transition 5 years, so we want to get quickly and get inspired, and so some things that maybe we shouldn't try, or maybe we have to be careful about.
So my biggest failure was trying to do too much too fast. And we went out our second year of no-till cover crops and planted way too much cover crop, like the seeds per acre were way too much, like 2 or 3 times way too much. And we did not understand that everything has a balance. And that year we cut our corn yield on those farms by half because we locked up all the nutrients trying to do too much too fast. And so even if you implement it over 60% of their acres, and they do it on a large scale, implement this in small steps. Like if you plant a cover crop, kill it when it's smaller, and the next year let it grow some more, and the next year let it grow bigger, because we have to allow the system time to recover. And that's our biggest failure, is we pushed way too hard, too fast. Now, we're doing those things now with success because our soil can handle that. But yeah, definitely make small changes that we can manage and then increase those management changes over time.
Каза, че понеже почвите един вид са по-изтощени в началото, той най-голямата, да кажем, неуспех е бил, че е засял супер много покривни култури, някакъв много голям микс, нали, с много голяма норма и реално ги оставил да порасна твърде много, т.е. изкален максимума да получи, нали, още в началото и това му е намалило доста добива на царевица и каза, нали, да правим стъпки, промени в стопанството постепенно, нали, примерно ако засажем покривни култури да не ги оставяме да пораснат твърде много, нали, постепенно почвата да надгради, да не скачаме директно нали, в най-дълбокото и, нали, като изпробваме някакви неща на по-малки полета и въобще, да, стъпка по стъпка, да, за да нямаме, нали, големи някакви такива грешки.
And I know it takes a lot of time to keep your data, but 10 years from now, being able to look back at where you started and how you changed your farming operation will give you the confidence. That's what gave me the confidence, was having the data of I did this and this didn't work, or I did this and this did work, and then we implemented what worked over more acres. Having that data really does take time, and as a farmer we don't have a lot of time, but that's what gives you the confidence to keep the change and implementation of new practices.
Значи казва, че въпреки че ни отнема от времето, е хубаво и много важно да си водим записки, какво сме направили, какъв е бил резултата. Това в момента на него му дава най-голяма така сигурност и увереност да прилага нещо, което се е получило на много по-голям мащаб. И да, като цяло просто воденето на записки много и това да можеш да погледнеш назад във времето, да видиш реално точно, с по-голяма точност, нали, какво е било, какъв е бил резултатът. Това наистина е много важно и съветът да се прави. You did mention about molasses and sugars and those kind of things. Can you tell us a little bit more about this and how do you do it and what exactly, when exactly do you do it? You said about use it for the insect prevention, pest prevention. Is it also another effect and how do you do it?
So I learned from Dr. Jonathan Lundgren that bugs don't have a pancreas, they can't process complex sugars. And are you familiar with the refractometer?
Yeah.
Is that something y'all?
It's very new, but we have it and we are starting to use it. And actually, I wanted to say about it. This year we had one guy with one conventional field, but the tractor drivers, they made a mistake and they planted 3 rows after the field in the regular native grass, and they after spray everything, and the corn, it was twice bigger and it had no insect. And inside, and actually this field is 2 years Ноу Тил, and there was one time cover crop. And even with this, it had this big difference of really not having the insect, and also the corn was twice bigger. Just a second, I want to translate. Значи, аз питах за меласата и захари, какви прилага за справяне с насекомите, защото да ви казвам, че използва меласа и захар за превенция срещу вредители. И казва, че... Какво казва също, че...
няма панкреас, не мога да разправя.
Да, казва, че от един от най-добрите ентомолози в щатите е научил, че реално насекомите нямат панкреас и когато, нали, има захар, те реално не отиват при растението да го ядат, защото, нали, ти си го напръскал реално с захар, листата лично и реално растението. Отделно, че дигаш самата захарност на растението, но и просто има захар, нали, по листата и те...
So the way we use sugar is we want to get the bricks above 14. And so 14 on a refractometer, above that, you will get insects that come into your field and they'll bite the plant, but there's so much sugar in there that it peppers them. It actually blocks the bug because it holds so much water, and they don't like that, and they'll actually leave the field to find a different source of food. And that's what I'm saying is you have to use it as a preventative. So if you already have the bugs in the field and you spray the sugar, it's going to take such a long time for the sugar to get in there for it to deter the pest. That point is too late. So we spray it early, and we go out once a week and check it with a refractometer. And if it needs more sugar, we spray more sugar. And we're only using half to a pound an acre. So it costs me about 50 cents, about half a dollar to spray sugar, which is very cheap compared to insecticides. And
let me translate because it's very important. And but it's really important. You said half a pound per acre of molasses?
Half a pound.
Half a pound.
A half a pound.
Yeah.
It depends.
Значи казва, че нали, трябва да се ползва превентивно, защото като наприска по листата на растението, му трябва времето да ги поема усвои. Ако вече имаме насекоми вредители по растенията, по полето, нали, това е малко късно и ги използва преди това, пръска нали, културата по-отрано и ходи всяка седмица и мери нивото на брикса с рефрактометър, който между другото е подарък. Да, между другото този рефрактометър струва под 30 лева и показва нивото на захар на културите. И ако е над 14, общо взето, това мери нивото на захарта. Същото е като това, което във винопроизводството се мери. Ако е над 14, реално самите насекоми няма да искат да ядат от това растение, защото има твърде много захар в него и реално дори да има вредител, той няма да се храни с растенията. Може би тук там ще има по някоя хапка, но наистина ние го видяхме и тази година на няколко полета, но реално на него му струва около 50 цента, половин долар на екър, което делено на 4 е 12-13 цента, около 20 стотинки на декар, което нали, е много доста по-евтино от стандартни инсектицид. So one application is half a dollar, but usually you need to spray three times. Or I mean, let's imagine that you are on the second year on Ноу Тил and your bricks is, let's say, 8 or 10 maximum. Let's say 5, between 5 and 8 actually. You're gonna spray it twice. Okay. Значи казва, аз го питах колко пъти пръска и той казва, нали, около 2 пъти. Което, нали, общо е нищо. Yeah.
There's another important benefit of sugar as well, and sugar is essentially an elemental form of carbon, and so I actually put a half a pound of sugar in the furrow with the seed at planting time, and that acts as a stimulant because when we're cold through the winter and the biology in the soil slows down, sugar works on soil biology just like it does with little kids. Yeah. And it's a super stimulant when we're coming out of cold winter to get that biology ramped up fast, and where we're mineralizing nutrients directly right there where the seed is, that young seed, and helping it grow early in the season.
So how much did you put in the furrow?
A half a pound.
Значи казва, че по същия начин слага около някакво минимално количество half a pound, което е половин, което е 250 мл, делено на 4, под 100 мл на декар, вътре в реда. Течно казва, че захарите реално на биологията и действат по същия начин, както на малките деца. така доста ги стимулира и особено в пролетта, примерно когато се излиза от зимата, реално тогава е още по-полезно, още по-голям ефект има, за да даде така бърз старт на културите за растеж. Sorry, can you, how much water do you put with the sugar, and do you use molasses or sugar? Is it the same or more?
If we're going in furrow, there's not a big difference between molasses and sugar. Mm-hmm. If we're spraying it over the plant, I'm using white. We just call it table sugar, so like any sugar that you would have from a grocery store, just granularized white sugar, and we mix it up with our water that we spray over the field. If we're going in furrow, I'm running 2 gallons of water. If we're going over the top of the field and spraying the plants, we're using about 10 to 15 gallons of water.
So 2 gallons of water in the furrow with half a pound sugar, and then
Yep.
10 to 15 gallons of water with how much sugar? 2 pounds?
Half a pound to a pound. So if you're spraying a young corn plant that's only a foot tall, a half a pound of sugar is really good. And if it's corn that's taller, or say wheat that's, say your wheat's about 2-3 feet tall, as the plant gets taller and bigger, it takes more sugar to increase the bricks. So the bigger the plant, that's when we increase the amount of sugar.
Значи, реално целта е да се повиши брикса на растенията, и ако са малки в ранна фаза, тогава слага по-малко меласа, отколкото ако са в по-висока напреднала фаза, има повече листна маса, просто защото ще бъде нужно повече захар, количество захар, за да се увеличи цялото ниво на брикс, за да може да има ефект, нали, насекомите да не ядат културите. И казва, че, нали, 2 са вариантите. Единият вариант е в реда, другия вариант е лисно. Ако слага в реда, слага около между литър и литър и половина вода плюс 100-200 мл захар. Стандартна бяла захар той използва, и меласата даже казва, че е по-хубаво, но реално той се използва захар. А пък ако е на полетата, средно слага между 10 и 15 галона, което е по 780-100 литра с така ли? С около половин килограм захар. На декар, да. Аз уж го преобразувах.
По-специфични задълбочени въпроси?
That is crazy. Other advices? I don't know. I could ask you hundreds of questions. Actually, I mean, we have sometimes often problems with this insect. It's a black beetle, and it's jumping around and eats the corn, the sunflower seeds, and sometimes, especially when you grow cover crops, and sometimes they grow good, and you have a lot of biomass, and then they are hiding under the biomass, and then when you plant the sunflower seeds, they are multiplied already, and they sometimes are really big problem, and sometimes people have to replant thousands of acres. I don't know if I can show you the exact beetle, but I can show you actually the exact beetle if you want.
Как се казваше?
Штурец.
Штурец.
Штурец. Cricket. Cricket is in English.
Cricket, maybe? It's this one?
Oh, yeah.
Cricket.
So yeah, what do you do with kind of solving this kind of problem if you have it in the first years?
We deal with crickets and grasshoppers, and there's no easy solution. It takes time to get the beneficials back onto your land to deal with them. Now, I had the same problems within the first 2 to 3 years, and then after that third year is when we saw things that would, they essentially just started decimating the crickets and the grasshoppers. But it takes time. There's no easy way around that.
Weevil е работници.
Така, значи казва, че принципно си има нужда от време, няколко години почвата полезните микроорганизми в почвата да се намножат, които регулират популацията на щуреца, така че няма. Реално има, но да кажем, че просто много трудно да си трябва време да се просто появи баланса в природата и да регулира количеството на щуреца. Can I ask you about another insect? It's in the corn, and usually I don't know if you know this. Gray weevil.
Gray corn weevil.
Gray corn weevil.
What crop are they having the problem in corn?
Corn, yeah.
В първа фаза
Wait. It's weevil, but it's a gray one. And
yeah, I'm familiar with its cousin here in North Carolina.
yeah, those.
So
Yeah.
Предполагам, че за него, защото в начална фаза той създава проблем. Нали за него имате предвид?
Точно.
Сив царвичен работник в начални фази.
Yeah, you can tell us about this one.
So I can tell you something that we've done in France, and you're going to think I'm crazy for saying it. We mixed sweet corn. We mixed sweet corn in with the grain corn and planted it all at the same time. And I mean 1%, a very, very small amount of sweet corn with the grain corn. And because the corn ear on the sweet corn is pulling so much bricks out of the corn plant that the weevil decimated, and I mean just destroyed the sweet corn and went after it and not the grain corn. And that worked very well in parts of France.
Okay, but it depends on the density.
Казва, че е сложил във Франция, така е направил такъв опит и е бил много успешен. Сложил е 1% сладка царевица заедно, миксирана в бункера заедно с стандартната царевица и реално работника отишъл на сладката царевица.
И колко царевичен работник има, защото аз тук съм виждала напротив каламитет в района.
Я
го питай за теленече.
Alright, we have insect discussion. Sorry. Yeah. Do you have this one? It's eating the sunflower.
Други неща е делил с очуга. Теленече.
Yeah, this one is very don't have specific diet. It eats everything, the sunflower, the corn. So do you have this problem, this insect? And
Give me 1 second. I'm looking up. I'm pretty sure that's a wireworm.
Yeah, it's a wireworm, yes,
yeah,
yes.
yeah.
Okay. Yeah, we have wireworms. The best thing that we found for wireworms was essentially the wireworm comes in as we see it first in the. I'm not an insect person, so I'm trying to think of what they call it. It's actually the way that it moves, the flight of it.
Yeah.
The beetle. It comes in as a beetle.
Yeah.
And then hatches as the worm later. Is what we. Does that make sense?
Yeah. And so what do you do?
And by keeping the beetle out with higher Brix levels and better plant health, we see less populations of the worm. So the worm is the larvae, and the beetle is what comes in and lays for the larvae. And so by having a higher Brix and better plant health, we see less worms.
Значи казва, че като цяло се опитва, нали, превентивно все едно да чрез поддържане на високо ниво на брикс захар в растенията, реално самия бръмбър не долита в неговите полета, нали, то е реално. Това му е идеята и по този начин не намалява реално и самия телен черви, количеството телен черви в почвата, защото, нали, той не си снася, въобще не идва, нали, на полетата, или ако дойде, или се отива, или не се намножава най-малкото.
Използвате ли неоникотиноиди за придобиване на семената? Позволени ли са при тях?
There was a question about neonicotinoids. Do you use it as a seed treatment? Is it prohibited in United States, or people use it?
The problem is I do not have a problem with neonicotinoids if you use them correctly. So should every acre of corn have a neonicotinoid insecticide treatment? No. If we have fields that we know we have a problem and we're in a no-till system and we're utilizing cover crops, can we use them for a few years to help? Yes. And then eventually, as your system becomes healthier, we start weaning off of that. Are you familiar with bifenthrin?
Just let me translate. Значи казва, че неоникотиноидите не са такъв проблем, ако си на Ноу Тил и покривни култури, нали, ако ти се налага в някакъв случай да използваш, нали, 1-2-3 години, за да се отървеш от даден вредител, нали, не е такъв проблем, според него, нали, от екологична гледна точка и реално да, не е просто такъв, не е толкова фатално. But you use it now, or did you reduce it kind of close to zero? The insecticide treatment, I mean, just in general, what's the
over 1,000 acres of crops this year, we may have had seed treatment on less than 10%. And those are new fields that we've picked up.
Yeah, not very surprising. Значи казва, че питах го все пак дали използва, нали, инсектицидно третиране на семената, и той казва, че на неговата ферма, която е 4000 декара, използва само на 10% от на площите третиране на семена с инсектицид, и то е било на полета, които са много, които той е взел. Yeah.
So, if just to give an example, bifenthrin is an insecticide. And if I have a wireworm issue or a cutworm issue, I would rather put some bifenthrin in furrow with the corn plant seed than a neonicotinoid, because we see better control of the wireworm exactly in that plant zone with having that in furrow. And they make a product called Capture LFR. It stands for liquid fertilizer ready, that we can put in furrow with the seed. And we see better control with that, with less harm than we do with a neonicotine.
What was the name of the, you said bio-retro, what was the name?
Are you talking about the product?
Yeah, no, not the product, the gene.
Bifenthrin,
How you spell it?
B-I-F-I.
Той тя за активното вещество.
In
Активното е
Активното
най-добре.
вещество, па ще кажа на възраст.
T-H-R-I-N-E. Yeah, there it is.
Пак е пир.
Да, значи казва, че използва това нещо, по-добро влияние има в, нали, около, нали, правейки тест срещу телен черви и някакъв друг вредител каза, около по-добър ефект има, нали, като около самото семе, семеното легло, и го използва това и е по-добро, по-щадящо от неоникотиноидите. Yeah. Yeah.
Добре, други въпроси? Казвайте.
Перитроид трябва да е.
Well,
Мерят ли си въглерода в почвата? Мерят ли си въглерода в
Казва
почвата?
от тебе, да.
Активния въглерод. Той е течен въглерод.
what about your organic matter? What was in the beginning and now? What's the difference, and what did make the biggest difference?
Our organic matter would have been between 0.5 to 1% in the beginning.
Well, sorry about
And what's that?
that. Sorry about that.
Oh yeah, it was degraded. Our best farm is about 7.5% now after 10 years.
Well,
And our average is about a 6.5. And reducing tillage and integrating cover crops, I mean, biomass is a numbers game, and it takes 20,000 pounds of residue to increase organic matter 1%. And by us knowing what our crop residue was from the cash crop and our cover crop biomass was, we've been able to track it over the last 10 years. And we're within like a 3% margin of error on what we know we put out there and where our organic matter is now.
Значи казва, че в началото, като са започнали, органична материя била между 0.5 и 1%. В момента има полета, които са около 8%. Средно полетата му са 6,5% за 10 години. Нещото, което най-много оказва влияние, реално е биомасата. 20 000 тона, не, 10 000 тона делено на 4. За да се увеличи органична материя с 1% е необходимо 2000 тона органична материя на декар. Ако го сме направено, може да не е точно така. Може да бъркам сметките, но да, реално биомасата е ключова. Yeah.
So I'm going to share my screen with you.
Yeah. Let me stop my share.
And when we were talking about the insecticide, can you see that?
Yep.
That's what we use for wireworms if we have them.
Just 1 second. Capture. All right. Yeah.
And you can see down here at the bottom, the active ingredient is bifenthrin and something that I can't pronounce because I'm a farmer and not a soil scientist. But we see excellent worm control if that capture element are.
Да, значи този продукт, това е който той ползва и може да, нали, вие да го потърсите, дали го има в доставка за България, да, може би да. Има, нали, доста добър ефект за терен черви, може би някакви най-вероятни други неща. Well, I probably you're very late and I really don't want to take a lot of your time. Maybe your final, I mean, I would love to talk 2 more hours with you, but it's really important to appreciate your time and I don't know, last final thoughts, advices, and maybe just in general in the beginning. I don't know.
I guess my final thoughts would be, if this was easy, everybody would do it. It's definitely worth it. You will have days that you will doubt it, but we have grown better crops. We're still farming today because of these practices, and they have made us more profitable. And ultimately, for me, I don't think that I will ever reach the plateau in my farming, but hopefully if my children want to farm the ground that I've built, they'll have it easier. So many generations took before me, and it's going to take that many generations giving before we get it where it truly is more resilient. And you have my email, and if you have any questions from farmers in your country, there are certain times of the year where I'm absolutely slammed. We're getting ready to start harvest, but if you have any questions, if there's any way that I can help you, feel free to reach out, and we'll be glad to help any way we can.
Yeah, that is very nice from you, and I will try not to disturb you, but maybe there will be questions, and I think there will be. Yeah, I wish you really good harvest time. I hope you beat the world record, and if not this year, probably next 2-3 years, it's gonna happen. And I'm really glad that you do what you do, and you inspire me and many other farmers, and your way of thinking and how you, I don't know, you quickly jump through succession and through, I don't know, your ideas are very, very out of the box, maybe, probably. I don't want to compare with other farmers, but you really, to me, are the one that is really probably one of the most, if not the most, that is out of the box. And that really is actually maybe what makes you going so quickly. Because there are failures maybe, but also there are bigger jumps. And one field get some kind of failure, it reduces your kind of yield maybe, or something like this, but the other one makes bigger succession, and then when you implement this one on the whole farm the next year, then really jumps you ahead. And
You nailed it on the head. That's happened. That really has happened. I mean, we've had failures, and that's why we're willing to share them, so farmers don't have the same headache. And we don't call them failures. We call them instead of failures, we call it learning potential or learning exercises. We learn from our failures.
Yeah, this is the most important. It's very crazy how everybody are passionate to share, and it's very interesting that it's not like this in the other way, the other farming, and it's very many people are skeptical that the people just would share just like this, and maybe people wouldn't understand that you are just now for free taking your time for people that you will never maybe meet, just to share and honestly give advices. It's not teacher, it's not your profession and your inspiration in life, but at the same time you're doing it maybe every day. And it is because of the results. It is because of the difference between the other way of farming and this way of farming. And maybe just one question, it's from me about the climate in general, globally. What's your advices, what's your thoughts about the climate change, what your advices would be about what we can do, what the farmers actually are able to do. It is really, to me the farming is really the solution. It's not the only solution, there are many solutions, but the farming is the easiest solution, the cheapest solution, and the most effective solution, but that's my opinion. But what do you think about this 1 hour topic?
Climate change is real, and as we see more development in the world, farming has the largest landmass that can be put to a good use to help fight climate change. And we have mapped the carbon on our farms since 2013. And we are sequestering 8 to 10 tons of carbon dioxide a year into our soil per acre. And we have the test to prove that. Now, do I think that these new carbon markets are there for the farmer? No. I think they're there to make their own money and use the farmer to do it and everybody feel good. But as you increase soil organic matter and as you make your soils more resilient, instead of us having these massive high yields and massive low yields depending on the year and the climate change, our yields have pretty much, they're not as high gains, but they continue to go up. And as farmers, we have to deal with the climate change caused by everybody else, not just us, but everybody. And so, do I see farming having a huge impact going forward? I think it can. I say this not as a negative, but just as a truth. In the U.S., our government is not proactive, they're reactive. And I think that's the reason why farmers have, like myself and many others, have taken the lead to help farmers change for better, because if we don't, look at what happened in New Zealand, look what's happening in parts of Europe where they're saying we're going to cut your nitrogen by 30%, or we're going to get rid of 30% of the farms for this 2030 agenda. I think farmers have to stick together, and I think we have to help each other in ways that have never happened before in the history of time, to make sure that we all move forward together. And that's how I feel about climate change. I mean, the stuff that I hear happening over in Europe right now with the famine stones in France and the rivers drying up and the Euphrates drying up, and we have the same problems here in the U.S. We have a water supply issue that has never been addressed in a good way, and if we don't address that going forward in agriculture, it's going to be a big issue.
Yeah, that is really clever and important, and it's difficult, but we're gonna try to really to help each other, and I mean the farmers, and
Yep.
yeah, we're kind of running out of time. I really wanna, talk a long time more, a lot of time longer with you, but thank you so much, and I wish you a really good day, and I wish you to meet more farmers. Maybe in future I would love to invite you to Bulgaria. It's gonna be very nice to travel around and show you farmers and look soils and cover crop mixes and such of things. I hope we're not gonna have more pandemics and other things that would stop us. And yeah, I mean, it's gonna be really beneficial for everybody just to meet people like you and to travel and meet and inspire and share ideas, and it's really the knowledge is the power, and yeah, it's amazing that you're gonna save the climate and the farmers billions of dollars euros to our farmers.
Well, listen, feel free to reach out. You can give my email. You can give my email out if you wish, and like I said, it may take me a little time to get back to people at certain times of the year, but I'll be glad to help any way we can.
Yeah, we're gonna continue, I hope, and probably, most probably. So yeah, thank you so much, and yeah, I hope yeah, your daughter gets your passion to farming, and yeah. And yeah, just to have more and more travels around United States to meet other farmers and just grow the community. What's the percentage in North Carolina, the Ноу Tillers at that moment, and generally in United States? How many people are doing Ноу Тил, and what do you think in your area also?
I would say that around 40% of people in North Carolina are Ноу Тил, and in the United States, around 10 to 15%.
So you're
Would be true, would be,
yeah.
and it's growing every year. It's slow growth.
Yeah, slow, but not too slow. Actually, I mean, it's good results, I think. When you take into account that it's just going from the farmers. We don't have companies publish it, and I don't know, we don't have that much of a government and that much of universities to help with this, so actually it's quite big, the results and the percentage of farmers that are starting. Yeah, alright, thank you so much, Russell. It was a huge honor and pleasure. I really think you're the best younger farmer, and I'm glad that you don't have the bad advices from your father and grandfather and so on, so you could start with a fresh mind and just jump into and develop, and don't think why I shouldn't do this, why I should this, and this kind of mentality.
Well, and like I said, reach out and we'll be glad to talk.
Yeah, we will. Thank you so much, bro. Thank you.
All right, have a good day.
Общо взето Ръсел каза, че през последните питах го какъв е процента на ноу тилърите в щатите. Той каза, че е средно около 15-20%, в Северна Каролина при него е около 40%. Продължава да расте и продължават все повече хора да правят ноу тил. Питах го за климата, какво мисли за климатичните промени и въобще за тези зелени сделки и така нататък. Той каза, че климатичните промени са си факт, случват се и трябва да търсим решения. Реално земеделието е едно от, може би, най-добрите решения заради огромните площи, които заема. Нали, казва за тези въглеродни емисии, че според него са въглеродни кредити и така нататък са повече като те да си гледат техния бизнес, не чак толкова да помогнат на природата. Каза, че Ноу Тил е щяло да се прави, ако беше много лесно, всички щяха да го правят, но със сигурност